Hey, so I thought I'd tell you about what I did today. Well, not all of it, but one aspect, which is at like 4 o'clock. Okay, first off, for people outside the area, there's a big deal in Washington State about this shooting that took place with a woodcarver and a police officer. And basically, the woodcarver was evidently deaf in one ear, or deaf, not deaf. Anyway, he'll end up deaf. But he starts out and basically the police officer tells him to drop his knife because he's carving wood, right? The guy's deaf as hell, and he ends up getting shot, basically. And there's a tape comes out, and it basically proves that he tells him to stop a couple times, and then he like unloads like 8 rounds or something into him. Which, maybe the guy turned with the knife, you don't really know. But what's important to know is that they basically lied about what took place. Because the video basically proved what happened was kind of a lie. And they ended up having to change their court thing and da-da-da-da-da. A lot of stuff happened. Anyway, there was a protest today at 4 o'clock and at, I think, 6. I didn't go to the 6 o'clock one, but I went to the 4 o'clock one, which was at, I think it's the city-state building, the governor's, where the governor does his work. And basically, there was a bunch of people there. Boy, that's kind of vague. First off, the hard thing about holding any protest in Seattle is that it's so expensive to do anything in Seattle. Parking's like $10 at least, and that's if you find a pretty good place, and that's like for an hour. So, I mean, getting down there is hard too. You can get tickets real easy, and in general, it's just expensive to get down there. The other thing is that the street, it's really an uphill city, so you don't want to go that far. I mean, it's like, unless you're going downhill and then you got to go uphill, and it's rainy, and it just wasn't good weather, and it wasn't a good place to have a protest, to be honest. So basically, the first thing, because Seattle protesters are, afraid, I don't know, they don't like protesting outside us. We went inside there, giant mayor mansion. It's not really a mansion. And most of the people there were Native American, and because the guy who got shot evidently was a chief, which I didn't know. In like a Canadian American tribe, like evidently they got people on both sides of the border. Random fact. So it's an international story if you want to view it that way. But I always think of Canada as kind of like Puerto Rico. It's kind of the same place. You might go someplace, but you're still there. You know what I mean? So the thing about the protest was that it was the most sad protest ever. I've never seen so many grown men just openly cry in my life. It was just a bizarre experience because everybody was upset. Oh, just so you know, this protest got started because today the court found that even though the guy did shoot him unnecessarily, there was probably no evil cause, which evidently you need for conviction of a police officer in Washington State, which everybody kind of forgets about, and until cases like this come up, and they just wanted to prove, I don't know. Anyway, so everybody was there. They were all really sad. They had drums. They had basic chanting. It wasn't a bad protest. The speeches were a little bit, it wasn't very well organized, I'll say that. But then, that's a legitimate protest. When people just gather up randomly and they're upset or they want something to happen. That's a legitimate protest. That's not AstroTurf. The police presence was strong but distant. They mostly just stayed outside the office on a bunch of bikes, which, basically I think their whole thing was they'd follow the protesters around to just make sure that they didn't stop anywhere for any prolonged period of time to, gum up traffic. But, you know, because, you know, Seattleites don't like being outside, they all were already inside, so the police just stayed outside. Which was kind of nice in a way, because it gave the protesters a place to complain in peace. What else about the protest? The one thing about the protest is that they hand out, if you've ever been to a protest, they hand out a lot of papers, just a lot of papers. Like, if you show up and you say yes to everybody handing you a paper, you're going to end up with about, well, I did that. I always do that because I like seeing what people are writing and reading and what their suggestions are, and you end up with a pretty big stack of papers, you know. And I mean, at least I don't think I've been to one where I haven't at least gotten 20. And this one only had, it was under 100 people were there. So it wasn't a big protest. And I ended up with like 30 pages of just papers. I mean, you know, how the justice system is corrupt, you know, more information on the killing, you know, the man who was shot, you know, just random bits of information. You know, all of it kind of important to the case in some facet. So, after the protest started to die down, they didn't have a lineup of speakers, which is kind of good, because you're always, you know, towards the end of the lineup, because they usually start with their best, or their worst, and it just kills the mood eventually, you know. It's best if it's just spontaneous, in my mind. They had run out of people talking, so it just kind of, it started separating. A lot of people were going to go down to where they were holding the 6 o'clock, but they weren't going to march in the streets because there wasn't enough people really to block traffic. They basically could block 2 to 3 lanes out of a 4-lane street, so they decided not to do that, which is understandable. I decided to grab some coffee, so I went over to a coffee place, and the most irritating thing about it being at a protest, in my mind, is not the police presence, it's not the people there who are yelling, it's not even the people that beg for money at a protest. It's when you go to a restaurant to order something to eat, and you have all these protest papers that you get, even if you don't want them, they force it on you almost. You end up going to a restaurant, and they always think you're going to pamphlet the area. And there's this big, fat security guard who's like, hey, what you doing with all those papers? Motherfucker, I got these papers from the fucking protest. And he's like, oh yeah, you're going to pamphlet this? No, man. I mean, look at these. They're all different. You think I went and printed them all off differently? I mean, stop and think about this. Be rational about this. I'm not going to pamphlet this place. If anything, I'd throw them away. I don't like carrying around a huge amount of papers. It's just a pain in the ass. So anyway, of course I wanted a Starbucks. I don't drink coffee for whatever reason. Ooh, Seattle, and I don't drink coffee. So I ended up just getting a soda. It's pretty nice. But yeah, I mean, the worst part about it though is this has happened multiple times. You go into any restaurant during or after a protest, it doesn't matter where you're going. There's always some security ass fuck just has to follow you around. I mean, it's like, I'd gone through the door, I went and ordered a soda, I sat down, and the guy came over again. And he's like, you planning on eating here? It's like, yeah, I got my soda here, I got my bag of chips. I got a bag of chips, by the way. You know, guilty. And it's like, are you sure? You know, I mean, it's like, I'm just trying to eat, you know? I mean, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just sitting with papers eating. I mean, that's what bugs me about the whole protest scenario thing there. And it's like, eventually just left, but I mean, he just stood there for like 2 minutes looking at me. Just like, and it's like, you're not going to intimidate me to leave when I'm sitting down drinking a soda. I mean, number one, that's bad for business. You should embrace it, man. I mean, those people were hungry, you know, at the protest. I mean, they could have made a good $100 easy. But no, they had to be dicks, and I don't know. I mean, the police I understand to a certain extent. I mean, I understand a lot of the protest was, you know, oh, we hate the police, da 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 da. The police have their purpose. I'm not going to argue there. But the security guards at public restaurants that really don't stop. I mean, when people usually want to protest for a little bit, and then they want to go eat. especially during small protests. Protests aren't something that most people who go to a protest don't spend their lives devoting it to that protest. Or even protests, plural, whatever that would be. I should probably figure that out. But they usually protest for a little bit, and then they get tired, they get hungry, they go eat, and then they go home and they go to sleep. Because that's what most people want to do. Most people are like sleeping. That's not just me. I've been to enough protests. That's the general thing. I mean, yes, there are hardliners that will go pamphlet areas. I'm not denying that. But, I mean, those people, the security people bug me. The people in the restaurants, it's like, you go to a McDonald's even. I've been to a McDonald's and there's like, they're not cops. I've seen the whole system work. I mean, it's like they call the police and say, there's somebody pamphleting us, can you stop them? It's not like they do anything. I mean, it's like, you could just ask the restaurant clerk to call it in. I mean, it's not going to stop them from pamphleting the place. And the other thing is, if you were going to pamphlet the place, you're not going to carry them in hand. You're going to put them in a backpack, you're going to put them in a shirt, you're going to carry them in secretly until you're there and you're ready to go, because they know you're going to have a guard waiting outside. I don't know. I'm sure I've droned on for almost 12 minutes, so I think I'm going to stop. I don't mean to make this into just complaining about that, you know, the guard at the restaurant. I mean, I understand it's just his job. It's just, it's something that upsets me. It's like, I don't know. As far as the protest, it was a pretty dull protest. Like, I mean, it's instantly forgettable. Hopefully, their cause, I mean, you know, it's like, who really gets justice, you know, I mean, I don't doubt that people get justice in the system. I just feel sorry for John T. Williams' family, you know, to be honest. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, they really didn't have that much to begin with. Now they lost, I mean, they lose their chief, and seemingly nothing gets done. The other thing is that there's a bunch of these cases happening in Washington State right now. There's been a lot of police shootings that have taken place that seem to be unjustly happening. I mean, enough that they got people, I think Civil Liberties Union, which I know, you know, they complain about most things, but they're actually looking in on it, you know, whether the police systems leads to more violent force, or more, what do they say, more lethal force than necessary, which is probably borderline true. I mean, he could have tased the guy, there's a lot of cases like that where they could have tased him, and then there wouldn't be this big fuss. I don't know. But then people get upset about tasing, you know. Why are you tasing him now? It's not... I don't know. Anyway, I think I've bitched enough. If you indulged me this far, I thank you. If you understand what I said, please subscribe, comment, rate. That's all I gotta say. Anyway, I'll see you later.